to the Home Assistant Podcast. My name is Phil, and joining me, as always, is my partner in crime, Rohan. How's it going?
Hey, good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. And joining us from the United States again, another one from the United States, is Aaron. How's it going?
It's going well, thank you.
And whereabouts in the US are you from, Aaron?
I am located in St. Louis, Missouri, so about as central in the United States as one could possibly get.
Nice. And you're probably better well known as Geek of Week on the Discord channels and GitHub. So thank you for sharing your config with everyone.
Yeah, no problem. And on Reddit as well. I go under the same handle.
Ah, well done. Yes. So we have a new release, which is 0.71, which let's get straight into. The first new feature this week is the support for Xiaomi smart locks. I do love my Xiaomi gear.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's, cool to see. I can't even believe they make smart locks, but apparently they have locks as well. So I guess if you want to let China into your apartment, there you go. There's smart lock support now.
Which is interesting because I've been looking at smart locks, and I was looking at a couple that we get here, and the one thing the only thing that's kind of making me shy away from it is the tendencies of it being bumped and stuff like that, right? It's I think Wiser, their Kivo, the first generation of it, actually had a huge problem behind there. So I'm curious to know how the Xiaomi fares relative to things like that. So I believe.
So do you mean just easily putting a credit card through to bump open the door sort of thing?
Yeah, or it can be picked easily or whatever it is, right? So I know they did fix it in the second iteration of the Kivo, and but it's still a problem though, right? That just kind of put me off of smart locks for a little bit.
I have the Schlag Connects.
Okay,
Those are fairly decent. I've read some of those too. I think those were a little better in terms of lock picking, but that wasn't they said they were on par with kind of the normal consumer grade locks. And I think that's probably what a lot of us tend to do, is be a little more critical when we start looking at the smart things. I think if we compared it to a normal home lock, it probably be in the same boat of, they're really not all that great at a consumer level.
yeah, fair enough.
Because they're busy advertising, we've got military grade encryption and, we're hacker proof, which is fine, but that doesn't mean it's, criminal proof that someone can just walk up and use a crowbar to get in sort of thing.
Exactly.
The way I always looked at it is if they're going to take the time to try to hack my door code, the door is mostly made out of glass.
Yeah, so it's only going to keep the honest.
They're going to take the path of least resistance would be to put a brick through the door window anyway. Right. If they go through that much trouble, then all right, you earned it.
Well, that's it.
Go nuts.
But I am interested about the Xiaomi ones. There is a device manufacturer. I don't own any, but I keep hearing more, especially on the podcast, previous episodes. I keep hearing more about them and getting a little more intrigued, especially on the sensors, because I have a hard time finding the kind of small sensors that just do a little thing, because humidity sensors or other type of things like that. So I've become more and more intrigued by some of their products.
Yeah, I think their premise is just cheap and cheerful, right? So, it's not super expensive. And a lot of times, for me at least, I'm not sure how it'll be for you guys down south, but for me, it takes a little bit of a time to get here from China or wherever using AliExpress. So I think when I ordered the plant sensors, I think those showed up a month after I ordered it or something like that, right? So
I think that's just everywhere. Australia's right near China as well, but it takes us a good month to get anything out.
Yeah.
If it's direct from China, even in the middle of the US, it can take some time.
Yeah. So that's the only trade-off, right? But I think I know Phil's a huge fan of Xiaomi, so
it's not they just make so many things. It's not even I've seen automatic umbrellas, Xiaomi automatic umbrellas that they make. Come on. How much stuff can this company make? Drink bottles and it's just crazy. And then I think they've even got a lot of smart home gear. There's curtain blind controllers, there's Yeah, so many cool things that they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because until just now, I did not know an automatic umbrella is a thing. I guess I'm living in the
Yeah, I
past.
did
Now you need to buy one.
So, anyways, moving on. So we've also got the Legoot LW12 Wi-Fi LED control added. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right, so I apologize if I'm not. Lagute. So just another Wi-Fi LED controller from a light controller perspective.
Yeah, control like LED strips but through Wi-Fi, which is really cool. We also have, now this one's, I have no idea how this is pronounced, iPerf 3.
Yeah.
IPF, yeah, cool. They've got client sensors, so it's now possible to use the iPerf 3 to test your network connection against a local or remote iPerf 3 server. So people using iPerf 3, that sounds like you'd be interested in that.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting one because that's not.
Yeah, that is interesting. I was just like, ooh, I didn't read about this one.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm already running through my head what I could do with this.
Yeah.
Nothing super useful, but I could test some endpoints, you know?
That's right.
Well, I guess it would be good for just like network monitoring, you know, another heartbeat sensor on the network.
And you know, I've had scenarios with previous ISPs where things would drop a lot.
Yeah.
You think you have a problem, but they're saying you don't, and where you could just run a constant test and log when it was dropping out and when you were having problems and have all this data to give back to them. Because I could tell you I've had that problem before.
Totally. But that's actually kind of cool that it's integrated in now.
Yeah.
Coming from somebody who's in a network world, that's neat.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that one is neat.
So also we've got Homematic IP. I believe there was one last week as well.
Yeah, there was.
So this is the cloud climate sensor, which I guess connects into their climate-based hub.
Yeah, nice. And HydroWise component has been added in. So if you use the Wi-Fi HydroWise irrigation controller, you can now control that through Home Assistant, which is really cool. I really love irrigation controllers and would love if I had a house that had power outside, I would definitely run automated irrigation controllers. So
yeah, this has been, and I don't have an irrigation system, but I've been looking into them mostly so I could integrate them into my smart home setup. And I also don't like watering plants, but figuring out how to get that in. And I've been like over the past few weeks looking at different systems. So additional ones I think are always good.
Yeah.
The more choices you have, right? So I know. Bakia last week was, or last episode was pretty happy with the. Is it the Ray machine that he had?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So, but
which is just added in some more sensors and services for Ray machine as well in this release too.
That's right, and then so. For what it's worth. Also, the Ryobi garage door opener. So if you have one of those, you can now integrate that into Home Assistant. So I know a lot of people have the Chamberlain MyQ Chamberlain MyQ garage door openers, and you got a little more choices now.
Yeah, I have the MyQ, and I have seen the Ryobi at the hardware store before. So that's interesting. The more that they can add to that, because I could talk about that a little later, but the MyQ works pretty well for me, but you know, sometimes it doesn't, and when it doesn't, I'm always like, okay, what else is out there, and what else is supported by Home Assistant?
Yeah. So one of the nice things I like in, I think some of the newer MyQ, I'm pretty sure mine has it. I need to check. And the Ryobi ones is the external battery for a backup. So one of the things is I don't have a door between my garage and my house. So if I park my car in the garage and my power goes out, well, you know, I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot for that one. So I am in the same boat. A backup battery becomes important.
Right.
And we also have a new notification platform added in, Flock. So if you need another way for Home Assistant to tell you notifications, you can now use Flock as well. Flock. I should just make sure I'm pronouncing that so no one thinks I'm swearing.
Oh, you're good. So we have more HomeKit support. So we can now do media players, automations, and switches. That's cool.
Yeah.
I think the HomeKit stuff has been pretty great at the rapid pace that it's kind of hit. So I'm always happy to read that. I actually just last week, I think, or maybe the week before, I got rid of Homebridge and switched to the Home Assistant HomeKit
nice.
setup.
Yeah, it's got to be getting pretty close now where it will be like
It-
feature parity where it will be just easier to use
It
Home
hit-
Assistant for it now.
Yeah, it hit all the things that I wanted to use, which is pretty basic, lights and locks and garage door covers, a few things. But I always like seeing the additional stuff. I mean, the pace at which they're adding new stuff has been really great.
Yeah, it's interesting because you see that you can do more through HomeKit right now, in my opinion, than you can natively through the Amazon Echo or Google Home, right? Just through integrating it with Home Assistant. So
right. Well, it makes, the amount of stuff that you can now expose through, because Home Assistant supports probably more than, any other kind of consumer level off the shelf devices you're going to get. And then being able to bridge those into a platform like HomeKit's pretty amazing.
Sure. So, but yeah. And then there's more improvements on some of those HomeKit packages as well. Or sorry, not HomeKit.
I think this one is actually
improvements for packages. Yes.
Yeah, like packages in general. Yeah. So I use packages for my Home Assistant config, and one of the downsides to it was some components like HomeKit you couldn't specify in multiple places. So if you wanted to include your kitchen lights in one package and then include the bedroom lights in another package for HomeKit, you couldn't actually do it. But there's now an update that will allow you to specify those top-level packages in several locations. A lot of them, like sensors and automations, you could already do that. But this extends it now to a lot more. So that's really cool.
Also, Nest has been updated to use Cloud Push. So that's kind of cool. I'm still trying to figure out what that actually entails, but...
Yeah, I think it's instead of it polling Nest for changes, so if you, assume if you changed it on the thermostat itself, it will then push, instead of Home Assist saying, hey, did you change anything? Hey, did you change anything? It will, Nest will tell Home Assistant, hey, cool. I just changed something. Really yeah, that's always, I like it when I see, if you're going to have to use a cloud component, which I know some people are against, but if you are, a lot of stuff still, that's how it works. This is a much better way to do it.
By a little, I mean a lot.
Yeah, a lot more efficient.
Yeah.
Okay, some breaking changes. The Australian Bureau of Meteorology sensor has had a couple of breaking changes just for wind direction and wind speed. So if you're using the BOM sensor, make sure you just update your config.
I was wondering what the BOM sensor is. I was like, bill of materials sensor? Okay, that makes more sense.
No.
that was exactly where my mind went with it too.
Also, they've removed the attribute for current time from rain cloudy sensors, and that was that's to avoid it being triggered by the recorder component.
Yeah, and unfortunately, another sad one is Notify My Android, which is a pretty popular notification platform, has been shut down as of the May 24th. So if you were already using Notify My Android, you probably already know this, but the component has now been removed from Home Assistant.
So also CoinMarketCap has a breaking change for all of your Bitcoin needs. So it's no longer possible to query the ticker by the name of the currency. So let's say you'd say like Bitcoin or something like that. So they use IDs instead. So I guess there's some kind of mapping. So instead of Bitcoin, you might say 1 or something similar. And then the rounding of decimals is also configurable now. So because it made no sense, I guess, to round to 2 decimals if the display currency was like BTC, for example. So
yeah, it's got many decimal places. Isn't it funny? Like now we haven't had that many components added to monitor the price of Bitcoin.
I know.
6 months ago, it was all another Bitcoin market watcher.
Yeah, there's and we used to joke about it both on and offline about how many Bitcoin sensors there are, right? But I guess that also kind of talks to the velocity of not necessarily Bitcoin, but of cryptocurrency, right? So
yeah, exactly. Another breaking change. This one, unfortunately, for Z-Wave users. bit of a fix-up just to give unknown Z-Wave nodes a better name if the Z-Wave node couldn't be passed for the manufacturer and the product. So just check the notes against the release notes if you're using Z-Wave and you've ever had an unknown device come up.
Yeah. Also, we now allow for allowed user-defined sensors. The net data sensor was reworked so that it can essentially have all of the information from net data. So what that means is it essentially means that you need to change your settings for the net data sensor.
Net data, yeah, nice. And not necessarily breaking change, but sort of a safety measure has been added into Home Assistant, where you can no longer trigger an automation without specifying an entity ID. So previously, if you went to trigger an automation and didn't specify the entity ID, it would trigger all of your automations, which you might not want to do. I don't think that would ever be a good idea. But if you do want to trigger all your automations at once, don't forget you can use the group _automations to do it.
What's nice is one of the things that Home Assistant changed a little while ago, and I was just thinking about this, is the way they changed the release cycle. So RC, for example, so they have the RC releases, and then they have the actual proper releases. And if you notice, the breaking changes section has been getting a lot smaller. So which means that RC kind of methodology is actually working a little better.
Yeah, to me that's been great. Like that kind of switch where it is stabilized so well, and I think the maturity too of the platform. But when a release hits, I think there's less problems because of that, and the breaking changes are kind of a little less and less now. And I do think it speaks to the maturity.
No,
of the
I
platform
agree
as well.
completely. So some noteworthy updates. So there's been some updates to the Vera component to improve the stability of the pole loops.
Yay, excellent. I use Vera, so any improvements to stability are greatly appreciated. Auto discovery for nanoleaf aura lights, those really cool looking light panels that you can stick on your wall, can now be auto discovered in Home Assistant.
That's kind of neat. Transmission download client has some new sensors now, so it also now tells you pause torrents and total torrents for all of your downloading needs. Yeah.
Oh, that's good to have. Yeah. Another update for Nest. So there is a new sensor, the Nest Away binary sensor, and also a sensor which will tell you the estimated time of arrival. So it'll give you a timestamp. Yeah, very creepy, right? It will let your Home Assistant know what Nest thinks your earliest time of arrival will be, and you can use that to trigger some cool automations.
That's interesting.
I'm
guessing that must use GPS on your phone or something like that.
That, or I think it's an I don't use Nest, but the learning mode. So it's it's supposed to learn when you come and go, and is probably its guess on when it thinks you're going to, either be home or not home.
Well, that's neat. So then you get to tap into Nest's sort of artificial
their
brain.
Algorithm.
Yeah, exactly, and work out okay, if the Nest is going to turn the heater on, well then I know I want to turn the oven on and start preheating that for cooking or anything like that.
That's hoping that their algorithm works reliably.
Well, it's funny because I think that really depends on kind of your municipality or county or whatever. Because for everywhere I've lived in, so my place, my parents' place, any my friends' places that I've seen or anything like that, the thermostat's always out of sight, out of mind. Meaning I'm not walking by it to trigger, hey, I'm here, right? So mine in my place is also similar, but luckily it's near my home office. So I just by virtue of working from home a lot of the time, it does, I do end up walking by it, but that's not, so this kind of intelligence might not work as well as you expect it to for if it's not posted in a place where you're walking around a lot.
Yeah, I think you'd have to be the kind of Nest ideal candidate of your schedule's a little more routine. It is in a place where it's going to pick you up walking by. But in those cases, I think it probably would work well. But you'd have to be that kind of that ideal candidate.
Or even in a condo, right? So if you're in an apartment or flat, something like that, then it's
Right.
It's a little nicer. So also there's services for adding and removing items to your shopping list. So that's kind of cool. Do we?
That's really cool. I would have thought that would have come out in like the first
What
release
is
of
is this a
shopping list, but
native
that's
shopping
really
list?
cool.
What is that?
Yeah, so Home Assistant has a shopping list component, which just stores things. You can, if you use the Chrome browser, and you have, I believe it's the conversation endpoint turned on Home Assistant, you can then just talk to Home Assistant directly from a tablet. Press the microphone in the corner and say add milk to the shopping list, and it will record it in the Home Assistant's internal shopping list component.
That's kind of neat.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's not one I thought about actually using.
I didn't either.
I don't even think I knew it could do it.
So there would be some cool things. So you could do a count, like if you open the fridge, every 20 times you open the fridge, add milk to the shopping list or something like that.
Let's see. Now you're thinking, You're already running through the automations for it. So I wouldn't even have thought of that one. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, it's just as simple as adding those services. I think, okay, now that there's a service available, absolutely, you can automate adding stuff to the shopping list.
Yeah, that's kind of neat.
Or you could even get something like, I'm just thinking out loud here, guys, sorry, like a water level monitor. Put it on, it measures, how much is in a jug of water or something, and then if it gets, maybe you could put some milk in there, and once the milk gets too low, it will then, add milk to the shopping list. And then once you refill it with milk, it will then remove milk from the shopping list because you've already refilled it. Cool. Something like that.
Yeah. Hopefully that component is waterproof or milk-proof.
But yeah.
Right.
Another good noteworthy feature for Sensibo users is you can now monitor the battery level of your Sensibo device. So you can now get Home Assistant to alert you to change the batteries before you get home and the AC is not working.
Also, there's an addition of the for Cody for an on resume event. So when you hit play again,
that'd be cool for home theaters. Hit play,
yeah, that'd be kind of neat.
Lights dim straight down again. And other places in Home Assistant land, Frank has released the Hass.io add-on for Node-RED, and Reddit has been going crazy for Node-RED in the Home Assistant subreddit over the last couple of months. So it's good to see that there is now an official add-on for Hass.io users that want to get in on that Node-RED goodness.
Yeah, I would probably say I saw that kind of coming because like you said, the drum beat for it has gotten louder.
Very loud.
The conversations kind of sprung up, and I was like, "Oh, what's this Node-RED?" And it just everybody, especially on the subreddit, everybody just talks about Node-RED now.
Well, it's interesting. It's funny because it's exactly what you said, right? Which is, I didn't look too hard, but I didn't realize this existed, and then all of a sudden you just see Node-RED, and I was just like, what's Node-RED? And then I look into it, and I'm like, oh, yeah.
That's exactly
Apparently
what
the rest of the world discovered it before I did, and I was like, okay. So now, also going on, OpenHAB actually supports text-to-speech for Echo, and there was a thread around that on the Home Assistant Reddit subreddit going, hey, is that something we can do? So that would be kind of cool. So that means now, for example, I can have my Echo tell me when a door is open, as an example, something custom that it can't do anyways, right? So today there's no push.
Yeah, you can actually, you could get her voice to actually announce things, which is
is it
something that I really want to do.
Yeah, there's a good use case for that. Is it UFill that has a separate system that basically for your voice out, and then your Echo is for your voice in?
Yeah, so I have Sonos speakers that do all the text-to-speech announcements. And I actually got some MP3 recordings of her voice so that it's just consistent. So when we talk to her, we get her voice. And then when the dishwasher or washing machine is done, I actually use the developer tools to download the MP3 file of her speaking, hey, the washing machine is done. So then I play it over the Sonos speakers, so it's all consistent.
Okay. So I use kind of in a similar method. Sonos does all my text to speech, and then the Echoes are kind of the voice input. But I switched to Amazon Poly to get the voices a little closer.
Yeah.
And I didn't do that very long ago. I think it was after one of the podcasts, actually.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, maybe that's something I should look into. But that's an interesting way of doing it, is kind of pre-recording it so the voices match up. Now, so are you saying that you can now use the echoes as a text-to-speech point?
So, well, not in Home Assistant, but OpenHAB have done
OpenHAB.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
And we will leave a link in the show notes to the Reddit thread. There's they've boiled it down to basically a shell script. There are some pros and cons for the way they're doing it, but apparently it's a service that can be called from the Amazon Echo configuration web panel. And yeah, it allows text to speech, at least in OpenHAB. So it will be cool to see that in Home Assistant soon.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think when I was going through it the other day, one of the things they talked about is basically saying, because the way the shell script is written is you're actually going and basically it's almost like a screen recording, right? Where it logs in, goes into the site, basically types out the words it needs to say, and then hits send, kind of thing, right?
Right.
So that's not a very scalable way of doing it, and it's not a very like if Amazon changes one small thing, then boom, everything's broken, right? Like so.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, just I could probably see the utility for other people, but I have this Sonos set up pretty much everywhere. Pretty much the same spot where I have echoes and mostly dots.
Yeah.
The Sonos would make more sense. They're louder than the dot's going to get. But for consistency's sake, I was kind of already running through that. That could be interesting.
Yeah. So let me ask you: Do you have it paused at night or something like that, or how does that work?
So I do. I don't do any random announcements right now. It's just kind of if I open the door between like I have a whole automation of if I come home and it's between these hours. Just give me a greeting when I open the door. So it kind of pauses after I think 9 or 10 p.m.
Yeah.
And then the other ones are alarm based. So I want it to wake me up if, that gets triggered, but I don't have kind of routine announcements saying anything.
Got it. Okay.
At least not yet.
Because one of the things I think Carlo was talking about was
right.
having announcements in the middle of the night and waking up the kids or waking up the partner or whatever.
Hey, the ISS space station is traveling overhead.
After that podcast, I went through and looked through his repo and was like, man, he's doing some really interesting things with that. Like a lot more than even I was kind of ever considering.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd want that many because I do a lot of just pushes to my phone, because it's quiet enough. But yeah.
Yeah, that's mostly what I do.
Yeah, text-to-speech can be very attention-grabbing and jarring when you don't necessarily want it to be. A little text message would be better. Jonas has emailed the podcast at feedback@hotpasspodcast.io. He's creating a plant database. So, Rohan, you were just saying before your My Flora plant sensors.
Yes.
He wants to just basically create a plant database for Home Assistant, and he wants to keep that updated with all the plants that you can put in. So then you just type in what plant you have in your home, and it will automatically complete the temperature, the humidity, the soil conductivity, all that for you. So if you are a green thumb and you would like to contribute to the plant database, we will put that link in the show notes for you.
That's awesome. So Aaron, now it's your time to shine.
All right.
So yeah, I mean, so tell us a little bit about yourself, Aaron.
Obviously I live in St. Louis, Missouri, so middle of the country. I work in the kind of enterprise tech field. I've been around tech pretty much my whole life. I started as like a, Linux admin doing kind of that stuff. So this, coming across this type of thing, kind of piqued my interest because it's also my hobby.
Yeah, for sure. And your GitHub repo. Tell us a little bit about that. First of all, what GitHub? Second of all, kind of like, what's.
So that was, shortly after I discovered Home Assistant, I was probably like most people, right? You're kind of trying to figure out how to make automations, what's possible. You kind of have this very small view of what it is you can do, and you want to do because you're coming off of either the native applications or using IFT, and you want to just recreate that. And then you start seeing other people doing much more complex things. And then you would go and I would look at the examples. I think when I started, there was maybe 5 other repos posted on the Home Assistant site. And I would just dig through them and say, wow, this is really interesting. They thought of something that I never would have thought of. And then I started getting kind of active on the subreddit and saying, oh, you could try this, or you could do this. I did it this way. Here's a little snippet. And somebody, I don't remember who, I'd have to go back a while and look at the comments, is like, well, why don't you post these on GitHub or share them or something? I was like, that's an interesting idea. So I did that, and I started sharing them on the subreddit and on the forum, and I got a lot of really positive feedback from them. So I kind of kept it going from there, and just keep it updated. If I make some, probably weekly or bi-weekly, if there's a new release and I change a couple things, I'll update it. I kind of have that scripted now. And then I recently went through and cleaned up my README file. It was getting a little, I think when I started, most people didn't really even have a README on it. So I had here's the list of devices I'm using, so you kind of know where, what it is I'm using for my sensors and my light bulbs and my switches. And then as people got better at it, the READMEs got a little better, and I was like, I think it's time to clean this up. So I spent, an afternoon going through and typing it up. There's some more polish I'd like to put on it, but yeah. And I actually go back and look at my own changes sometimes. I'm like, well, how was I doing this a while ago?
That's a beautiful thing about
and go look at the history.
Yeah, the history is great. Yeah, I remember back when I first started using Home Assistant, there was a list of GitHub repos, and I kept stumbling onto yours, maybe from Reddit, and I just remember saying, wow, this is the most well laid out GitHub repo there was at the time. Well, and I think yours is the only one I had starred. So yeah, you definitely made an impression for me. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, that was really my goal, was, other people's repos had kind of helped me in the community. And I was like, as I do this, I kind of want to give back a little bit and help other people get started. And that was the big thing. And that was a big overall in general, which really drew me into Home Assistant, was the community.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I really didn't see another community that was as cordial and as helpful as the Home Assistant community was. And so that was kind of a really way for me to kind of, let me help give back and show you, and also for feedback too. Am I doing something in a really convoluted way that makes no sense, and there's a very simpler way to do it, and somebody could point that out for me, which people have done, and it's been very useful.
Yeah, I think I've seen a few pull requests made against your repo that you've merged in as well.
I've done one, and I'd have to go look, so I apologize to whoever it is that did it, but the one with the battery sensors with the dynamic icons,
yes,
that one's been great. Something very simple, but they put that in, and I didn't think it was something that I would want or need. But I really love that one.
I copied that when I saw that pull request coming on your repo. I pinched that the next day. But actually, that's now
that is great.
Yeah, that's actually natively supported with the new device classes for sensors. Just an FYI, so you don't have to do that.
So I probably don't need it anymore.
No, you can just set up a sensor and call the device class battery, and it will do the icons and the percentages and all that for you.
That's cool.
Oh, well, now you gave me something to do for the weekend.
There you go. So how are you running Home Assistant? Are you using a Raspberry Pi or HassIO, anything fancy?
I started with the Raspberry Pi, probably like most people, because I had some sitting around. And I ran into stability issues with the SD cards. I bought cheap. We have micro centers around here. They're kind of like similar to Fry's big box store, and I would buy their cheap ones, and they would fail on me. And it was getting to the point where I was getting really reliant on Home Assistant. When you start, it's, it turns the lights on. That's cool. And then you really start building things, and it becomes, man, I forgot how to unlock doors myself. So I wanted something a little more reliable. And I built an Ubuntu server VM and just ran it as a VM. And that worked for a long time. And then I discovered Docker, and that kind of changed everything. And now I just run it as a container. I don't use HasIO or any of those things, I think, because I already had a setup going prior to that coming out, and didn't really know if I wanted to change it. But I still kind of follow it and I look into it. But the Docker has been really stable for me, works really well in my workflow. I kind of really enjoy using it that way.
Yeah, I think HasIO is a great way for, we are, Rohan and I, we use Docker. We're not ashamed to admit that. I think HasIO really allows people to, for people that are less technical inclined, and they want the benefits of Docker, I think House.io is a great way for them to get the benefits of Docker without having to get dirty and knowing the Docker commands that are using it. So,
yeah, and that's usually the way I recommend somebody starting out to do it, because I'm like, well, you got to get a server that runs, Docker, and then you got to run these commands. It's a lot easier to say, well, follow these instructions. A lot more people are using it. So yeah, I usually recommend Has.io for new people.
Yeah, no, I agree. So have you been using any other controllers or anything before a Home Assistant, or is this kind of your breaking into home automation?
So it was early. I did the usual progression I think most people do. You buy a device, you use their native app. Oh, this is neat. I can have the thermostat, change a setting when I come inside using their application, and I can have Hue do something when it times based on their application. I go, well, I'd like to string these together. And of course, the next thing that most people do is they go right to IFT, and you start using IFT, and then you go, well, I want to do more. I want some more options in here. And I haven't used IFT in a while, and they may have fixed some of it. And then I found it to be slow. So then I really started, well, what's the best way to kind of converge all these things down? And I don't even know how I came across Home Assistant. It may have been on Reddit somewhere, probably, because that's where I was spending a lot of time. Or searching. I did mess around with OpenHAB, but didn't really care for it. I had supported Java application servers in the past, and that kind of, was like, I don't know if I want to mess with Java. So I found OpenHAB, and it was using, which I know a lot of people don't like, but it was using YAML, and I was familiar with YAML, and was like, okay, this is interesting. And I fired it up, and I think I had it running like that afternoon. I was like, this is amazing. Like, this is exactly what I would like to do. And it kind of just progressed from there. And I think it was probably late 2015 was around when I started using Home Assistant, because I published my repo in early 2016. So I had probably been using it for a few months prior to that.
Oh, nice one.
And now that's pretty much all I use is Home Assistant, a pretty big evangelist for it as well. Like, I'm like, this is the way to go. Trust me, you will not be disappointed,
And what sort of components are you using?
All right. All over the map. Your standards, like Hue is kind of my main Zigbee controller.
Yep.
This was a big thing too when I cleaned up my repo, was point out how things are connecting. So I use the Hue hub for anything Zigbee, so all of my light bulbs. And I have a mix of some actual Philips Hue bulbs and then some Cree connected. I bought some of those early on. I'm a big fan of the regular Cree light bulbs. So those all go through the Hue hub. And then I use the Wink hub, and it's a generation 1 for pretty much everything else. So Z-Wave, the Lutron switches, which I'm a big fan of the Caseta switches. So I don't have their hub. I just use the Wink hub for it. And then anything Z-Wave goes through the Wink hub. And I kind of use it as a dumb hub.
Yep.
I don't do any automations, use any robots through it. It just ties into Home Assistant. And then the rest of it's either Wi-Fi or whatever cloud component they need, like my Ecobee or the Wemo plugs, some other things like that.
How about for presence detection, for home and away and all that kind of stuff? Are you doing anything there?
So I use probably what very few people use now is Locative.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm saying that right. It was one of the early ones, I think, that was integrated into Home Assistant, and it was iOS only at the time. I think they may have put out an Android app, but the development for it has kind of fallen off. He's not really doing a whole lot of updates for it anymore, but it has been the most rock solid, stable way I have found to do presence detection. And it works kind of simply by you set in the app geofences. And then when you break those geofences, either enter or exit, it sends I forget exactly what it is. I'd have to go look, but it basically sends a command to Home Assistant and says, this device has left this zone, and here are the GPS coordinates for it. And it works 99+% of the time, almost no battery impact. So it's worked really, really great for me so far. So I just kind of keep using it. I've tried, pretty much everything under the sun I've tried, because that's always the big one, right? Is getting your presence detection to work properly.
It's the most tricky one to get right.
I tried the iCloud component, which really just killed the battery. And I know I've seen some updates to it that has been a little less aggressive, but it would also, it polls every so often. It uses Find My iPhone. It polls every so often. I would find that, you'd be home, but it wouldn't trigger until a few minutes later, and then your battery would die. And then at the time I was having, I think I still had an Asus router before I switched, and I would have problems with devices not leaving or coming back quick enough, mostly leaving. It would stay as if it was home for like an hour or two. And I was like, well, that's not going to work. Or it would in the middle of the night, because iOS would put the phone to sleep, would drop off. So I actually built in, I still have it in my automation as kind of safety precautions, that I have some booleans that get toggled after X amount of time to keep that from happening. So I rarely action on you're actually home or away. It's kind of the booleans, or, if I action on home or away, it's that boolean has to be on to kind of mitigate. Cause I was having like things turn on in the middle of the night. This is in the early days of doing it. And then I also use, I'm a big fan of the Ubiquiti Networks Unify line, which I was really, really excited to see when Paula said he was going to work there. I was like, oh, that's great, because I love all their equipment. I use those for like everything else. So my two primary devices for presence tracking, I use Locative, and then everything else, I kind of use just the Unify.
Sure.
It's a network. If it's on my network or off my network, it's home or away. And I do that for I have a friends and family group, so I do some automations based on other people being here, overnight guests, or, I have people that I know if they come from out of town, they show up on my network, do something different, adjust the climate for the upstairs level, or allow them into the house. So for that, I use Unify because I don't want to have to install an app on their phones and configure it and do all that. And that has actually gotten a lot better lately. It works pretty reliably now.
That's actually really cool. So
yeah,
I've thought of trying to use that for like that kind of a methodology for guests and stuff, and it's like I don't know, I think I was always just put off by the amount of effort that would take, and I was like, okay, maybe not.
It was, and then what I ended up doing was I made a group. So I have like two groups. I have a friends and family group, and then I have a house guest group, or an overnight guest group, I think I call it. And then I put like specific people in that group, because I know that if they're here, they're out of town, they're most likely going to be staying overnight. So, do some things. The other one's just kind of friends and family, and I'll have, don't turn the lights off outside, my backyard patio lighting. Don't turn those off at a specific time if they're here, because we may be sitting outside.
Sure.
Who knows? So I don't do a lot of crazy things with it. But when I built those groups, it made it a lot easier to do so. And then if I have somebody staying long term, I may be gone, or I will briefly allow them to, if they show up, it will unlock the doors for them, turn some lights on for them, kind of treat them as a temporary member of the household.
Right. Well, that's kind of nice.
Really cool. Yeah. So how many people are in your smart home?
Two primarily. It's just myself and my girlfriend, and we're the ones that use 90% of the location stuff. Is based on, us either coming or going. And we both have kind of very odd schedules. She works in the medical field and I work in the tech field, and I either work from home or I'm on the road, and I'm on the road, quite a bit. So we don't have, our routines are kind of all over the map. So being able to like just trigger things if one of us are home or both of us are home, or, coming and going, made it much more useful than trying to just build schedules around things.
Nice.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. So what are so out of everything you've set up, like out of all your automations, routines, whatever you want to call them, what are your favorites and why? Like, how have they made your life better?
So it's so tough to pick one. Probably the home and away ones are the most useful by far. Coming home and no longer carrying keys, or the garage door opener. It's gotten to the reliability point that now my door locks also have keypads on them. So in case something doesn't work, I can still get in the house. Right. But, pulling up and the garage door opens, the door unlocks and the lights turn on. Those are like the most you kind of day in, day out use. And they're just useful. You don't even notice that you're using them. In fact, anecdotally, I had we've come to rely on it so much that at one point I was on a business trip and the MyQ was giving me grief, and it turned out to be something ridiculous, like the LED bulbs that were in there were interfering with the radio on it, and it wasn't working anymore.
Oh,
I was like, well, I can't fix it until I get home. Make sure you close the garage door when you leave in the morning. And of course I would check and the garage door was still open.
Oh, no.
So because you've gotten so used to it's just going to close and it's just going to open. So, I mean, and that just kind of shows how reliant, you become on it.
sure.
So those are probably my favorite. And then I get the neat ones, when if I left and I toggle this Boolean on, and it's between, I think, 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. Greet me when I walk in the door. That one always blows my friends' minds. I actually had it for a while. I removed it because it did get so cumbersome greeting my friends as they came in. And that one always blew their mind. They would be so kind of creeped out by it because, they come in and the Sonos would welcome them or say something, to make fun of them. That always creeped them out, and I always got a kick out of it. But then, managing all those text-to-speech automations got a little tough, so I removed them.
That's funny.
So you guys have mentioned today, like, that you both have garage door openers. I don't, and I see a lot of people. They seem to be very popular with home automation users. So how accurate is your automation, Aaron, with getting, like, pulling up the car? Like, is there a delay before the garage door opens, like, or is it just perfect? Like,
it's pretty perfect. It's not 100%. It's in the 90% range. It works really well for me most of the time. Now, I also, I'm in a similar boat that my garage is detached, so it's at the end of my property. Right. It's an older house. So the house wasn't, it was built almost 100 years ago. There wasn't a garage when they built the house. They added it on. It's at the back of the property. So there's really nothing else in there. I mean, it fits 2 cars and that's about it.
Right.
So for me, being able to have it open when I pull up and then it closes, I think I padded 10, 15 minutes after I'm home, it will close the door. So it's not an entrance into my house. So I don't have kind of the security concerns that some people do.
right.
But it works, I mean, pretty reliably. I rarely have any problems with it.
And how do you have it automated? Like, is it detected so when you arrive in your zone for the first 15 minutes, the garage door opens up?
Yeah, so it's when I break. Let me, because this is one of my older ones. So I actually I have two modes, and I thought this was very clever when I thought about it. I have a away and driving and away and kind of just walking or just away.
Right.
So the neighborhood I live in is kind of very walkable, and there's other things. So sometimes we don't take the cars and we just walk up the street someplace.
Yeah.
So I don't want the garage door opening when I come back from walking because I don't need to get into the garage door. So what I did was when you exit the zone, so when I go away, and if that garage door is open, toggle on the Boolean that I drove. Because
nice.
there would be no reason that the door would be open and I would leave with it open unless I was driving my car. So instead, because I was going down in my head all kinds of crazy, complicated paths of, well, how do I track my car?
Yeah.
Maybe a sensor, I break the sensor. And that was a very simple solution just because of my scenario that it's detached and I'm not walking out the garage door. So only when that happens, then when I come home, the garage door opens. If I walk, it will also unlock the front door and the back door. It'll unlock both doors, so I'm not burning. If I drive, it only unlocks the back door, so I'm not burning out the batteries in the front door all the time. So I kind of built some automations around that. But it's usually just, coming home or away, and that toggles on, the garage door opens.
That's very smart.
Turns the lights on and, unlocks the back door. And I also have it set to when my girlfriend works, she works pretty early in the morning. And this was actually one of the things that prompted me to do some of the home automation stuff. Is it would be, being in the medical field, would be really early in the morning, which a lot of people in the tech business don't get up super early. It's dark outside, you know. So she's like, it's dark. So I started doing things like, I'll just have the lights come on very low early in the morning. And then I started getting kind of crazy with calendars. So if on our calendar it says work, it turns that on. So that's only the time the lights come on. But now I have it set now. If it's set that she's working and she opens that back door in the morning between a specific hour, the garage door will automatically open. So she doesn't even have to tell the Echo to open the garage door or do anything else. It's just opening of the door on days that she works. She's home between these hours, open the garage door. And that's like just one of those very small things that seems to be very, very useful.
That's really
neat.
cool.
So what are you doing for the and I'm genuinely asking just out of pure selfishness. What are you doing to integrate the Echo with the MyQ? Is that running through Home Assistant, or is that running through, like, what's the deal?
Yeah, so it's through Home Assistant, and it was I did it very simply. I did emulated Hue and created a Boolean. I think I just called it garage door. And then I have it pick up that, right? So Echo sees it as a light, and you turn on or off. But then I wrote some automations that when that switch goes to on, open the garage door. When it goes to off, close the garage door. And then I have some automations that if the state of the garage door changes on its own, let's say I use the Home Assistant app or whatever else, it toggles that thing on. So it always matches what the garage door is doing, and that's kind of how I did it. I do a few others that way as kind of my quick and dirty way of getting Echo integration to things that probably aren't supported natively by it.
Yeah, because I know at one point when I had that going, I had to actually say, hey, turn off the garage door, turn on the garage door for it to open and close, right?
You do have to say you do have to say turn on and turn off. Although I think, and I don't know if I tested it, I think I put in the Echo now has the routines, and I think I made some that said, like, when I say open garage door,
right,
turn that
that's a nice
turn
way to
that
get
light
around
bulb on it, and it thinks it's turning a light bulb on.
That's cool.
And one of the other neat ones I like so many of them, I could probably talk forever on that, is my bedtime automation. So it literally just does exactly what you would think. It just shuts everything off. And through the Echo, I do a similar thing of turn on bedtime or it's bedtime. I think I wrote some routines in the Echo that all toggle that on. And when it does, it shuts all the lights off, locks all the doors, makes sure the garage is closed, resets the thermostat to sleep mode. If it's like before, I think it's automatically scheduled to go into sleep mode at like 11 p.m. or something like that. But if it's before 11 p.m., do that. And that one's like one of those that I just rely on every day, because I just go to bed and I have the lights on in the house and the TV's still on, and I just say it's bedtime, and 5 minutes later, everything shuts off. It's that one's just kind of daily useful. And there's a lot of them like that. The ones that you don't think about, but they're really useful. The Roomba ones. I run the Roomba if I am home during the week. I think at 10 a.m. because if I'm home and it's a weekday and it's 10 a.m., I'm in my office, which is on the second floor. So run the Roomba, but make sure my girlfriend's not home because it's really loud and she'll be down on the first floor. So it only runs when she's not here, or if we both leave, 15 minutes later, turn the Roomba on. And then I have the 900 series, which has the camera that it uses to see. And at night, it doesn't do real well in the dark, unlike previous Roombas. So I have it turn some low lighting on if it runs at night, and then turn that lighting off when it's done cleaning. And that one's been great. I mean, that one just works all the time and a lot less intrusive than just trying to schedule, given our kind of crazy schedules, scheduling the Roomba to run at specific times and turn it off because it's loud and I'm trying to watch TV, at this time.
That's cool.
That's awesome. Some really cool automation ideas.
I sit around, the way I view it is I sit around and think of things that either annoy me or, things I would like to automate. And I do kind of the thought experiments of, well, how could I make this happen? And then I start running through it. Then next, couple hours later, you came up with some crazy new thing to automate. And that's kind of just over time is why I have so many automations, because I just think of crazy different things to try and I just keep adding them in. And, my pace is slowed because I think I'm running out of things to automate. Every week I would try to add at least one or two new things to it.
Yeah. Well, I guess you hit a certain point, right? We're like, okay, I think everything I need is done. And at some point you need to just sit back and enjoy it too, right? So.
Right. Yeah, and that's been more the case. I haven't added a whole lot of new devices lately, although the plant sensors have intrigued me, and a few other things. And I think I added 2 or 3 new smart bulbs last week, and like one of the very few remaining lights that were not, smart, which I think I'm down to like 2 in the basement that don't, 2 storage rooms that don't really get used. It's like every other light in the house now. Running out of things, like I'm kind of like shopping for new devices, new things I want to try, because I enjoy doing it as well. It's a big hobby. So
I think everyone that is into Home Assistant at the moment is guilty of that, right?
Yeah,
right. I'm like, don't get into this unless you're willing to spend some money on new devices and a lot of time. Like you have to kind of want to do it. It's not a I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but simple hobby,
or cheap.
Yeah, or cheap.
Yeah, definitely not cheap.
Cheap's always the one that there's been a few people on Reddit. I want to do this, and I was like, I'm just going to warn you, as soon as you go down this rabbit hole, you think you're going to start small, because everybody starts small, and then it blows up, and then you're buying all kinds of crazy things every week. I think I started with the Ecobee. I ordered it, I think, the day I closed on my house, because I had always wanted a smart thermostat. I was like, that is just so cool. I can remotely control it. And it just kind of snowballed pretty rapidly from there. It was, I bought the Hue Hub, and then, what's this Wink Hub? And then, it just went kind of off the rails there for a few months of buying new things all the time and adding it. I was like, this is so cool. I could do all these crazy things.
And then you get to a point where you want all those different things to start talking to each other, and then you have to bring in Home Assistant, and then it goes on and on.
Which is what led me to Home Assistant, yeah.
Well, Aaron, thank you very much for joining us this week. We will leave links to your awesome GitHub repo on the show notes as well, so thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. It's been great.
Thanks, man. Cheers.